Welcome to The Good Word. My name is Vincent Goodwill, senior NBA reporter for Yahoo Sports. We are part of the Ball Don't Lie podcast. Get us wherever you get your podcast. We are doing this a little differently this week because of 9/11. We're recording on Thursday. Either way, it is a huge honor to be joined by a frequent guest of this here show. He is a Hall of Famer. He is a legend. My man, David Aldridge, joining us live from the nation's capital. How you doing, DA?
Vinny, I'm doing all right, man. Thank you for having me.
Does it feel like we have it all season? Because I feel like training camp is like a couple weeks away. Yep. And I don't know what happened to the offseason. There used to be a real one, isn't one anymore.
No, well, there used to be a real one before you were born. It was real. They used to have, after the draft, they would have mini camp. There was no summer leagues back then. Every team had a mini camp where the draft picks would come. They'd practice with the team for a couple of weeks. And the mini camp would end on or around the 4th of July. And after the 4th of July, you would go to the office and you would say to your editor, all right, I'll see you on Labor Day. That was it. And you took 6 weeks off because there was nothing going on in the NBA for 6 weeks. So that's when you took your vacation, and if you are a beat writer, you built up so many comp days that you had an extra 2 weeks. You had an extra month, basically, of vacation built in. So, yeah, that's how it used to be. But it's not like that anymore, obviously.
Ain't been like that in a long time.
It's been a long time.
yeah, Summer League, USA Basketball, right. The Olympics, the offseason. I feel like it's the middle of September. I don't even remember when September 1st was, but we're in the middle of September, which means we're getting perilously close to October 1st, right. Where we're going to start off, DA, is the business the Denver Nuggets, champs once removed, of getting Jamal Murray signed. Yeah. And it's weird because the new CBA has screwed the Nuggets probably greater than any other team when you consider the punitive tax aprons, the fact that we won't get into the minutia of it, but y'all, the more money you spend, the fewer mechanisms you actually have to use to get players, to keep your own players. That's why you lose Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Bruce Brown and Jeff Green. And they signed Jamal Murray to a 4-year, $208 maximum contract extension for a guy who's very critical, right. But he's never made an all-star team. And he had a good year last year. We all thought he was going to make the all-star team. He did not. But we got to see him, DA, towards the end of that playoff series, or basically throughout that playoff series against Minnesota. He looked worn down, and you got to see the effects of a Jamal Murray being worn down because that placed more pressure on Nikola Jokic and all the other pieces. Mm-hmm. Was this just one of those necessary evils that the Nuggets, have had to do? And do you still consider them a championship favorite, or are they sort of middling at this point?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, Vinny. I mean, you got to keep your best players. Every team has to do that. We know that Jokic is the best player. They've taken care of him. Look, they made decisions, man. They gave Michael Porter that contract in 2021.
Yep, that's the one.
Now, I'm not saying, look, they won a championship with Michael Porter, so it wasn't a bad contract. But to your point, doing that contract along with the Jokic contract hamstrung them in terms of being able to keep KCP. Now the next thing is what to do with Aaron Gordon. So it's still about choices. You still have to make choices. They chose to, their decision was Michael Porter is too important for us to let go or trade or whatever. Okay, and that's cool. You want a chip. But that will keep you from doing other things like re-signing KCP and maybe, and let's be honest, they made a decision as an organization that they were going to go through the draft and draft young guys that they said would contribute right away to a championship team. And they didn't. So that's on them. You know what I mean? These are choices that the Nuggets made as an organization. But you have to keep Jamal Murray. I mean, he didn't have a great playoff series last year, great postseason last year, and he didn't play well at all in the Olympics for Canada. He was not good. So, Jamal being the type of person he is, I'm sure is going to come to camp, dedicated to having a great season, being in having the type of conditioning that you need to play at an all-star or better level in the NBA. And I don't know if the Nuggets are still, well, they're a contender. As long as they got Jokic, they're a contender. I don't know if this roster right now is good enough to win the West.
Right.
You can't keep losing key guys. They've lost. You mentioned Bruce Brown, who was a big part of the championship team that they lost. And if you go in retrospect, not for a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't like they lost him. It's not like he signed for $200 million somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, so. Yeah. And then they lost KCP, which was another vital part of what they were trying to do. So they're not the best team in the West. I don't think you can say right now, realistically. They're one of the good teams, but it's going in the wrong direction for Denver right now. And I'm not sure how they fix that.
Well, it's funny. You brought up something that I wanted to get into, and I feel like you're the perfect person to talk to about this. Adam Silver, at his Board of Governor press conference in New York. I was in New York a couple of days ago. There's a handful of us in the room with him. And one of the questions that I asked him was, you're trying to legislate parity. Like, the CBA is clearly designed, not just this one, but starting with the 2011 CBA, even though Adam Silver wasn't actually in charge, that was still David Stern's league, but that was Adam Silver's CBA. Make no mistake about it, guys. He hadn't yet taken over. He was still deputy commissioner, but he was the lead negotiator on that. This was the NBA that he was going to have to take over. Now, DA, the league that you grew up initially covering, that you talked about, the, go away for 6 weeks NBA. That's the 80s and the 90s. That is the explosion of the league with whether it's the TV rights, the Magic Bird, Jordan, transition and everything else. Those were the days that we considered the golden era of people of a certain age. And parity was not something that the NBA was striving to have. They had a lot of expansion. They went from 23 teams to 29 or whatever in like a 6-year period. But to close this out, David, do you believe that it's a stronger league when great teams have to be pared down to just good teams because their best players can't all be held on to and they have to go elsewhere to get paid? Or do you like this NFL style where, you look on a piece of paper, maybe 10 teams feel like they have a chance of winning the championship compared to maybe 4 or 5 or maybe 3 back when I was starting to watch it and you were, in the throes of covering it?
Yeah, no, I like dynasties. I've always liked dynasties.
Yeah.
My kids would get very upset every year when they watch football, and no matter where Tom Brady played, his team won the Super Bowl. And they got mad because we're sick of watching Tom Brady. We want somebody else to win. Like, then build a team good enough to beat Tom Brady. Stop whining. You know what I mean? Like, I like he's the best that ever lived. You got to be the best who ever lived to beat him.
Right.
And so I don't have a problem with that. Like, I grew up with Magic Bird, Michael Jordan, and Isaiah Thomas. I don't mind excellence. I like excellence. Like, those people are great, and they deserve to be on top until somebody is good enough to beat them. And so that's never been a problem for me. I have but you can hold different opinions in your mind that may contradict one another. It is also important that any league, whether it's the NFL, the NBA, baseball, hockey, whatever, that everybody have a chance to compete, not to win, because everybody can't win, but to compete and to put a product on the floor that people want to watch. I always use the analogy that, as you know, Vinny, you grew up in the Midwest. It gets cold in the Midwest in the wintertime.
Yes, it does.
It gets cold in December. It's cold in January in Milwaukee and in Indiana.
It's cold in May
Chicago,
half the damn
Detroit.
time.
It's cold. So you got to give me a reason to come up out of this warm house and put a coat on and take these kids and spend my money watching a basketball game when I could sit in my nice chair and watch TV and stay warm. You got to give me a reason. And so those teams have to put a product out there that's good enough to compete. That's why it's important that Giannis be in Milwaukee. That's important to the NBA. Like, because people in Milwaukee got to have somebody to root for too, so that matters. So the league has been doing this for 20 years. They've been trying to legislate parity. This is nothing new. this is the logical extension of luxury tax, revenue sharing, all of these things that have been designed to equal the playing field, right? So it is what it is. Competition is the best players are still going to win more often than not. But you can't have a league, and I think this is a fair point. You can't have a league where half the teams in the league check out before the All-Star break because they have no chance and they just start tanking. You can't have that. I understand that. And that's the other thing they've done. They've legislated tanking out of the equation by making it far less advantageous to be really, really bad. Like you have a 1 in 4 chance now to get the first pick if you're one of the worst teams in the league. So they are at all levels trying to make the league, make people spend money, but not too much money to put a good product on the floor. So are those things contradictory? Yes, but I understand the contradiction.
It's a weird thing because for people who don't remember the 2011 CBA, I'm not going to go all the way back into the archives and everything else, but remember, the team that it hurt the most in 2011, 2012 was the small market Oklahoma City Thunder, who drafted well. They drafted 3 superstars who all earned max contracts. And because they were in the small market and could not or chose not to go into the luxury tax and did not have the in-town revenue that the Lakers have or that the Knicks have, it was very punitive, or would have been very punitive, to hold on to Kevin Durant on a max and then a Rose max, where legislated into the 2011 CBA, where he wound up going from 25% of the cap to 30% of the cap, and then Russell Westbrook and then James Harden. Those were supposed to hurt the big market teams from overspending. It hurt the small market team from being able to capitalize on everything that it had done right. We're going to draft well. We're going to develop well. We drafted 3 superstars in 3 years. I don't think that's ever been done. And it wound up hurting them more than it wound up hurting the intended effect of legislating parity amongst the top crust of the big market teams.
I'm going to push back a little bit on that now. Look, we ain't going to have no benefit concerts for Clay Bennett now, are we?
Not never.
That's a choice. Again, that's a choice. You chose not to go into the luxury tax. You chose to move that team from Seattle to Oklahoma City, presumably so that you would have a chance to maximize the revenues of that franchise in Oklahoma City, which is a choice. Okay. You also made the choice that I'm not going to spend luxury tax money to keep this team together. So, I'm not going to have no pity party for ownership now.
Never. No,
you make choices in this world. Jalen Brunson chose to take less money because he wanted to have a better chance to keep the Knicks together and add more pieces. Players have say in this too. So you can't just say, well, I'm a max player, I deserve the max, and this player deserves the max, and this player deserves the max, and we win 49 games. Well, no, I can't have 3 max contracts on a team that wins 49 games. So everybody's got to understand that everybody's part of this, and again, I use the Knicks as an example because Jalen Brunson, that's as one of the most selfless things I've seen a superstar player do. Every superstar player can do the exact same thing Jalen Brunson did to be able to have more good players on the team and enhance our chances of winning. So you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. You can't say put a championship team together and, oh, by the way, give me $50 million when I'm barely an all-star player. Come on.
That's a good point. And on the back end of that, with Jalen Brunson, when his contract is up, he can sign for a 10-year, player of service max.
He'll get paid. I understand. He'll get paid. But I'm just saying, everybody makes this is all about choice, freedom of choice, whether it's a player, an owner, a general manager, a coach. Everybody's part of the choices that a franchise makes to decide how willing they are going to be to put a championship team together and then keep a championship team going. That's why I will never have a bad thing to say about Joe Lacob. I won't have a bad thing to say about Wyc Grousbeck and Steve Pagliuca in Boston, because they put money on the table and they kept putting money on the table to keep those teams together. And you got to give them credit for that, and even, and Joe Lacob finally said, okay, that's enough luxury tax. My team's not good enough anymore. But he paid that luxury tax for years to keep that team together and to keep winning championships.
Yeah, like you said, it's a double-edged sword. And I think, and just to close this out, because one of the points that Adam made to my question was, we want Giannis to stay in the place that he's at. And I'm like, absolutely. But it's not just Giannis. Just like it wasn't just Magic and Bird and Michael and Isaiah. It was the corresponding players around him that created the texture. It was the James Worthys, the Kevin McHale's, the Joe Dumars. There's all those type of guys who were there that helped create the vision of everything that we saw. Some of the parts were more interchangeable than others. That's why you get to see the Celtics on top for an entire decade, the Lakers and everything else. Norm Nixon went to Byron Scott, Bob McAdoo went to James Worthy, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I get the larger point of everybody, DA, has a choice here. My sensibilities are, if you have a championship historical type of player, I don't want the system to break it up. I want someone to come and knock Mufasa off of Pride Rock. Where's Scar?
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
Maybe that's the wrong analogy to make, considering James Earl Jones just passed, but y'all get what I'm saying. All right? Now, when we come back, we're going to pause for a minute and come back. We're going to come back with 5 players. Me and DA both have 5 players with something to gain or lose this season. You're listening to The Good Word here on Yahoo Sports. Welcome back to The Good Word here with Hall of Famer David Aldridge. DA, I gave you a homework assignment. I gave myself a homework assignment. We came with 5 players with the most to lose or gain this season. We're going to go back and forth serving volley. DA, who's the number 1 guy or number 5 guy on your list?
Oh, we're going in reverse order.
Yeah,
okay.
We're going reverse order.
Well, okay, then I started with Jalen Green. So, because I think Jalen Green is a very good player. But we talked about choices before, right? So the Rockets have to make a choice. They have to make a decision. Like, all right, Jalen Green's a good player. We're an up and coming team. How much money are we going to put into Jalen Green? So, he's up for a rookie extension. And so it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out, because they have other good players on their team now.
Yes, they do.
They may want to spend money to keep around other. So I think it's a very big year for Jalen. I think he's got great talent, and he has displayed it on occasion. More than one occasion in Houston over the years. But Houston's a different team now than they were when they drafted him at the top of the lottery. And so this will be a big year for Jalen Green. I think one way or the other, it's going to be a very big year for him.
I mean, you got to think about that draft class. Kay Cunningham, maxed out. Scotty Barnes, maxed out. Evan Mobley, maxed out. Like, all those guys are in that sort of realm, and you judge yourself based off of what your peers get. And that's your own market value. So, yeah, and then he's got on his own team, Alperen Sengun, who is a beast in itself, that did not get extended this year. Right. That was a very curious thing. Number 5 for me, I'm going a little bit on the older side, DA, because I just saw him in the Western Conference Finals, and I feel like we see him every year become the topic of slander in spring and summer. Rudy Gobert. He's got a player option after this year for $46 million. The slander continues, whether it's Shaq or somebody on Instagram or somebody on Twitter or whoever it is. He just catches hell because the defensive player of the year numbers that are accrued during the regular season, when people aren't watching the Minnesota Timberwolves as closely compared to when you're being watched every night during the postseason. And I don't think the defense is necessarily the problem per se with him, DA. I think, you're going to get abused by Luka Doncic on the perimeter. Like, everybody gets abused on the perimeter by Luka Doncic in a game-tying, game-winning situation. It's the fact that they can't exploit anything with him on the offensive end. That team in Minnesota is getting a lot more expensive. As we talked about the luxury tax, the punitive luxury tax. Karl Towns is there. Anthony Edwards' max is kicking in. Mike Conley. Like, their window is right now, in theory. If you believe in what they did last May, their window is right at this moment. And if you take away Rudy Gobert, that changes the dynamic. If you take away Karl Towns, that changes the dynamic. So I'm very curious if Rudy Gobert still fits in that, or if the Timberwolves are going to look at it and say, especially with the new ownership stuff happening, where Glenn Taylor wants his team back. All of a sudden, the team gets better. Glenn Taylor like, hey, y'all, run that back this way. Run that back this way. That valuation, y'all ain't got the cash for it. Right. Guess who got the cash for it? Holla at your boy. That's what he's saying. So
no doubt.
Rudy Gobert, number 5 on my list. Who's number 4 on yours?
Well, number 4 is Cat. Speaking of Timberwolves, just because, Cat was a big part of them taking the lead, but he also was a big part of them not playing very well in the Western Conference Finals. Yes. He did not play well, right?
No, he did not.
So, and you look at that squad, it's Ant's squad now. We all understand it's Ant's team now. I agree. You mentioned Gobert. Let's put it this way. I don't think their management, which brought Gobert in and spent 500 draft picks to get him, is not going to be inclined to trade him now, because he can't trade him. You're not going to get the value back for what you spent to get him. So you want to keep him. So just knowing, knowing Tim Connolly in that group, they're invested in Rudy Gobert. So they're not going to trade Rudy Gobert. They're not trading Ant, obviously. There's one guy they can trade and get something for him. So again, I think this is going to be a big year for Cat. He stayed healthy this year, which is important, coming off of the injury 2 years ago. And he played very well. And for long stretches and in the playoffs, he played very well. But that last playoff, that's the one that always leaves a bad taste in your mouth, and so he's got to prove it again. That's the league. It's unfortunate. It's unfair, but that's the league.
What have you done for me lately?
Absolutely.
So Karl Towns creates some of the dumbest fouls I've ever seen in the history of life, where he literally plays the Sheila E. Bongos on top of someone and then says, y'all calling the foul on me?
Right.
Like it is astonishing that he does that. It's almost comedy. But I do think that he showed that he's capable of playing winning basketball.
Absolutely. No, he had a very good year last year.
Very good. And he played really well against Denver in round 2, especially in those instances where he had to guard Jokic and he had to play on the perimeter, and he was not exploited in that way. It showed that he had a level of discipline there.
Right.
Even though this is no longer his team. Number 4 for me, may I introduce you to a gentleman by the name of Ja Morant? I don't know if you've ever heard of him, because we haven't seen him much in the last year, David Aldridge. We didn't see him that much. He had the 25-game suspension because he wanted to play with guns on Instagram. And then when he came back, he had an electric game against New Orleans. I was in the building for that, the game winner. And we were like, oh, okay, Ja Morant is going to start to take off. And then he hurt his shoulder not too much longer after. The shoulder tear ended his season. The Grizzlies looked terrible without him. And as stacked as the Western Conference was last year, it's going to be even more stacked this year, because Memphis is a 50-win team if Ja Morant is healthy and his head is on straight and everything else. But his head's got to be on straight. He's got to be healthy. Yep. He's got to be able to assume the mantle of leadership and maturity there. Like, not to keep harping on the kid, because there's no point in harping on it. You have no reason to believe that he's not doing the right things, because we haven't heard anything. And the only reason we heard anything before DA was because he told us. So at least he's not, if he kicking it a certain way, at least he's made the decision, unlike other people, to keep things off of Instagram Live. See how that works, y'all? Just keep stuff off IG Live. We only know stuff if you tell us. We don't need to know what you're doing, Ja, or anybody else. That's number 4 for me. Who's number 3 for you, DA? Or if you got a thought on Ja Morant.
No, I mean, look, Ja's, when he's healthy and his head's on right, he's an MVP level player. So I don't think that's too much to ask. You can't do nothing about health. Health is fungible, but head screwed on right, that's on you. You got to have that, and hopefully, to your point, he understands now that there's just things he can't do because he's a high profile NBA superstar player.
And remember,
he can't do no more.
They got Marcus Smart last year. Like, they made trades to with the thought that, hey, this guy is going to come in and help us and make us a little more dynamic defensively. Right. And their season was just blown to bits after the suspension and after the injury. So you never got a chance to see them in full bloom anyway.
Yeah. So they're, that's a good call. My 3 is Trae Young, because I think Trae is I think he's at a crossroads in his career. It's not all his fault. I'm not blaming him but I'm saying the Hawks are kind of running in place. I don't think anybody thinks, Ricochet is talented. He's going to help them, but I don't think anybody thinks that's going to take them to the top of the Eastern Conference this year. So you just look at that franchise and you go, where are they going? What are they doing? I don't see a plan here to kind of get them back to where they were a couple of years ago. And so a lot more scrutiny is probably going to fall on Trae. It's not his fault, I don't think. But Trae is what he is. He's a really, really good passer, an exquisite passer, a great scorer. The question is, how much do those things facilitate winning? And the answer is, well, enough for them to not really be awful, but not nearly good enough for them to be contenders. So it's going to be, I think, it's not a make or break year for Trae. He's going to be in the league for a long time. But in terms of, is this a guy that is a face of the franchise, number one guy that can take you somewhere special? I think that's where we don't know anymore. Or we need to be shown again by Trae that he's that level of player. And that, to me, is going to be an interesting challenge for him this year.
I think the answer to your question, is he a number one guy? I think we know the answer to that. I think the answer is clearly no. And not through any fault of his own. Like, there was some quote, I forgot where he was. I just saw it somewhere. He said if he was 6'6", he'd be the best player in basketball. Hey, dog, if I was a little lighter.
I could say something X-rated here, but I'm not going to.
No, but hey, DA, this is not necessarily a family show. We have family elements to it.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
I got you.
Look, if I was taller and lighter, I'd be Boys Kojo. Instead, I'm me. I'm pretty damn handsome as is. Like, I get my work done with what I got, but I'm not wishing that I was somebody else. Right. Work with what you got. Trae Young, my question with him always is, can he be effective if he's not dominating the basketball? Like, the one thing Stephen Curry has always had is the ability to facilitate scoring without the ball, where he's running around the baseline and you can keep your eye, you lose sight of him for a second and you got a problem. With Trae, you know exactly where he is because he's clapping for the ball somewhere. And I don't think that type of basketball at 5'10", I know they list him as 6'1", but he's 5'10". I don't know if that type of basketball, high usage ball works. I think he's extremely talented. I think he's extraordinarily gifted as a passer and a shooter, but the decision making and maybe just takes for him to be on the right type of team. DA, my number 3 is sort of in the same mode, but a little bit older and I think a lot more mature. Damian Lillard. Last year in Milwaukee, he got traded there right before training camp to stand off with the Portland Trail Blazers. We all know he wanted to go to Miami. He wound up going to Milwaukee in the last second. Adrian Griffin started off the season. Doc Rivers took over. They never found their footing. And I think, DA, one thing from covering this league, the stuff that happens with players off the court affects what happens on the floor. He was going through a divorce. He moved away 3 different time zones away from his kids, and that really affected him on the floor. Add to the fact that he's getting older. He strained his Achilles in the playoffs. He missed 2 games. They got knocked out in the first round by, the Indiana Pacers. They've won a grand total. The Milwaukee Bucks have won a grand total of 1 playoff series since winning the championship in 2021 with a prime Giannis, who also missed significant time.
Check Giannis's playoff record the last 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot.
Yeah, exactly. So I think with Dame, because his clock is ticking and ostensibly you go to a Milwaukee Bucks or you go to the Miami Heat because you want a greater chance of winning. I think the Milwaukee Bucks are kind of in that Nuggets spot, DA, where they're one of the contenders, but they're not far and away the best. They're looking up at a couple of teams, but yet they're close enough to championship form where if a few things break right,
get prime Dame, yes,
they can be right there.
Yes. If you get prime Dame, like we all thought they were going to get last year, Yeah, no, they're right there. And I like what the Bucks did in the offseason. They didn't have a lot to work with because of the luxury tax and all. They're already at the second apron. But, to add Gary Trent, to add Delon Wright, I think those are really smart, really good moves. Those are vets that will fit in. They extend your bench. Those are good, smart plays. But it all comes down to, is Dame healthy? Is Giannis healthy? Because nothing else matters with that franchise. So yeah, no, it's a good call. And I think I've heard Dame's working out really, really hard. So I think you're going to get the best of Damian Lillard this year. I think it's a good call.
Who's number 2 for you?
Number 2, Zion. Mount Zion. And again, there's nothing you can do about getting injured and getting hurt, but the reality is, I've found over 3+ decades in covering pro sports, there's 2 types of people. There's 2 types of players. There's the player who gets hurt and he's out for a week, and there's the player who gets hurt and he's out for a month. And unfortunately, Zion's been in the latter category too often. And that's, again, I'm not saying he's not hurt. He is hurt, but everybody's bodies are different. Right. Everybody's built differently. And he has to be healthy for them to have a chance in the West. I think they have a chance in the West when he's healthy, but he just continually can't get to the postseason healthy. It's the same problem Embiid has. It's the exact same problem. So it's not that he has anything to prove necessarily, because he's already proven when he's on the floor and healthy, he is a dominant player. But he just hasn't been able to, for whatever reason, be able to get to April and in one piece. And until he does that, I don't know how the Pelicans can get to where they want to be as a franchise.
I feel like we're sort of simpatico here, okay, DA, because Zion was not on my list. Neither was Brandon Ingram, who I felt like deserved strong consideration to be on this list because he did not receive an extension from the Pelicans, and you wonder what his future is there. Right. Number 2 on my list is Julius Randle from the New York Knicks. Shoulder injury last year, right shoulder surgery. He's not a guy who will go and sit out for a month when it's a week. He will go out and play. He will go and be your horse. Yes. He played 46 games last year because of the injury. I think he suffered it on Saturday afternoon against Miami. Awkward, really, really tough fall, and missed the rest of the season. Jalen Brunson took it to another level. I think he averaged like 31-7 from January on, or late January on, when Julius Randle was out. How does Julius Randle now fit in with this iteration of the Knicks, with OG Anunoby, with Mikal Bridges, with Jalen Brunson being the undisputed number 1 MVP candidate? Right. Julius Randle's a guy who pats the ball. He needs the rock. He's going to take it. He's going to dribble it. He's going to dominate possessions. He can't do that anymore because of the plethora of options that the Knicks have, and the fact that he no longer fits in the same spot in the hierarchy that he fit in before. Right. So I'm very curious, DA, how he fits with this new iteration of the Knicks. He's going to have to play some small ball center. Isaiah Hartenstein is gone. Right. Can he? Can he do that? I don't know. I mean, I they were 29-17 with him. Right, last year. So it's not like they sucked with him. They were pretty good. So, boy, I think the question is, what's the role? What's the best role for Julius Randle now? Right. And so I don't think he's going to be. I think Julius is at a point in his career where I don't think he's tripping off of numbers or all-star appearances or anything. He got paid, So I think it's about winning now. And so what's the best way I can help this team win? But that's going to be an adjustment, Vinny. I think you're right. I mean, he's going to have to show that he's willing to do it, but I think he will be. Just because I think you'd have to be really obtuse not to understand the best version of this team is with Jalen Brunson on the ball, like making decisions about where the ball goes. That's the best version of this team now. I mean, I think they'll figure it out. It might take them a while to figure it out. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, a healthy Julius Randle playing the way he plays is a matchup problem for a lot of teams, and it would be silly not to exploit that and take pressure off of Jalen. I mean,
I won't say, look, I'm not going to fall into the cliche about Thibodeau teams, but
what's the cliche, David Aldridge? No, what's the cliche?
That everybody gets hurt.
That ain't no cliche if it's the truth.
I'm just saying everybody got hurt again at the end of the playoffs. Everybody was hurt. So one more healthy body can help extend your bench and make that less likely. And adding Bridges makes that less likely. So there's other ways you can score, and there's other people you can go to besides Jalen hurtling himself into the opposing defense time and time again and hitting the floor and drawing fouls. So yeah, I think it's incumbent upon all of them to figure out, all right, what's the best way to incorporate Julius into this group? Because, he's talented. He can help us win games. We won games with him, so what's the best way? And so everybody's got to figure it out. I think they will, because that team seems more mature than other teams in terms of understanding, all right, this is how we win, and this is what we're going to do to win.
Now, I like the moves in theory that the Knicks have made. But like you said, OG Anunoby was hurt at the end of that. Jalen Brunson broke his hand, freak injury in Game 7 against the Pacers. Like, they got, let's be clear about this. That was not the reason they lost that series, because they got through some games by the skin of their chinny chin chin and maybe some fortuitous officiating, right? They were on the ropes anyway because they had run out of healthy bodies. If Julius Randle is heavy, that's a guy that can slow down more possessions. You can beat up. They were really good with Hartenstein and OG and Julius. Like, they were bludgeoning teams, per 100 possessions, because they were able to rebound. They were able to switch, gain more possessions, and control pace. Just very curious what that lines up like. And on top of that, Julius Randle's playoff movies left a lot to be desired. So if you take a little bit of pressure off of him, adding more ball handlers, shifting him down, maybe he's a more efficient ball player when the going gets tough. Now, your number one player, I have a feeling we might have the same number one.
We might. I don't know. But my number one is PG-13. That's my number one. Again, Paul George is a great player. You can make a Hall of Fame case for Paul George, right? Like a legitimate one, like a real one. Like he's been an excellent player in this league for a very long time. He has not been able to get to the playoffs healthy or stay healthy once he makes the playoffs. And that's all that this is about now with him in Philly. Because if he's healthy in May and Embiid's healthy in May, Philly's going to be in the finals next year. I just don't think those two with Maxey.
You calling it now?
I just think I don't know. I think a healthy Philly can beat Boston. I do. But the chances of a healthy Philly being there, until you show me you can do it, I can't believe that it's going to happen, right? So, but that's the burden. The burden on Paul George is to get the 76ers to an NBA championship. That's the burden. It's unfair, but ain't nobody asked you to go there. You chose to go there. Again, back to choices. You chose to go to the one city in America where the smoke is the thickest. It's Philadelphia. Ain't trying to hear no excuses. They're not trying to hear nothing. You go to Philly, you better play or they're going to kill you. They're going to crush you. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to get crushed by fans. You're going to get crushed by the media. It's Philly, man. I'm just different. Like, New York is their own thing, but after New York, Philly is as tough as there is. And that's the market you went to. You chose to go there. So you got to be there. You got to show up and you got to play at an incredibly high level. The good news is that he's capable of playing at an incredibly high level. So, so that's the burden. That's what is on PG is championship or bust. Literally championship or bust. There's nothing else for the 76ers right now.
They got to get to the finals. Like, I'm going to set the bar a little bit lower. Just play a game in June. Right? That's all I want. If you're that team and you have not gotten out of the second round, if memory serves, since 2001. Right. I was a junior in high school with no facial hair in 2001, right? The Allen Iverson, George Lynch, Eric Snow, Dikembe Mutombo, Larry Brown, Aaron McKee, those 76ers, you have not gotten out of the second round since then. Great point, DA. My number one player, I'm going to read you, DA, his list of games played in the last 4 years.
Okay.
My number one player, 52, 57, 64, 60. You want to guess who that is? David Aldridge?
I want to say Beal, but I don't know. Beal had 1 year where he played 70, I think.
He did. He did have one good year. And it is one Jimmy Butler.
James R. Buckets, yes.
The number one player on this, because remember, Pat Riley basically called him out after the Heat underwhelmed in the first round series against the Boston Celtics. They were in that 1-8 spot. And the Heat just have this sort of really weird, sort of almost seismic line where make it to the NBA Finals, swept in the first round. Make it to Game 7, swept. Make it to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, make it to the finals, swept in the first round. Like, it's been wildly successful for the Miami Heat to have Jimmy Butler as their best player. The standard for the Miami Heat is championships. Like, that's the standard for one Patrick James Riley, right? That's what it is. And he ain't getting no younger. Right? There's terrible lyrics to a terrible song that says, we ain't getting no younger. We might as well do this. If ever I propose to a woman and I say those words, baby, I don't love you that much. Now, Jimmy Butler, the Heat did not extend him. He has a player option for 25-26 for $52 million. He wants an extension. He's going to be 35 in a couple of days. There's that really weird part in the CBA where once you're past 35, you can't sign, super long. 36, you can't sign super long deals.
30,
that's why
over 36 contracts. Yep.
Yeah, that's why you see Steph signing the 1+ and LeBron signing the 1+ because them dudes is old. And Jimmy Butler is getting perilously close to that point in his career where whether it's him conserving his body or his body is being beat up, he's got to show up and play for the Miami Heat this season because an 8th seed and an 8th seeded run to the finals, I don't think that's the way the Miami Heat wants to do business. And I do think that Jimmy Butler understands what's on the line for him this season, and he is an ornery and he is a stubborn son of a bitch. He is one of the most stubborn basketball players, and I say that affectionately. Affectionately. He's one of the most stubborn players I've ever covered up close or from afar. In my almost 15 years of covering the league, DA is almost 15 years. That's how old I am, right? Yeah, I know, right? It's crazy.
Okay.
But, I know, right? I know. DA is like, yeah, try 40. DA is literally looking at me like, there, young fella. How about multiples of 15? That's the look that DA just gave me. But DA, what do you think about the Jimmy Butler conundrum this season? Because when he plays, he's excellent.
Yes, he is. And I think something was funky with them last year. Now maybe the air has been cleared. That does happen sometimes, but sometimes it doesn't happen. So I will be very curious to see what the vibe is from the Heat. We all know Jimmy likes to be a little different on media day. I'll be very curious to see what his media day vibe is going to be this year down there. Is he going to look like one of the Beatles? Is he going, you know what I mean? Is he going to be quoting Sun Tzu, or what's he going to be doing? So, yeah, no, it's definitely worth monitoring because they are with an engaged and healthy Jimmy, Miami can win a championship. Again, they're good enough. Their coach, their system, their style, the way they play, they're good enough. Without one, they're not good enough. They're not close to good enough. So, that will be fascinating to see how that plays out. I thought he would have been perfect going back to Philly because him and Joel are tight, but he didn't agitate for it, like he didn't say, get me out of here. He didn't do that. And so now he's in Miami. And I think that, again, they have a team that's good enough around them, and the coaching is certainly good enough that they can get to a high level. They've shown you they can do it. So it's not like this is a pipe dream. But he's got to be healthy and engaged enough for that to happen.
I don't know if their roster is good enough. I don't know if I believe that much in Tyler Hero, Terry Rozier, Duncan Robinson as supporting players compared to Derek White and Drew Holiday and Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis.
No doubt.
You know what I mean?
I mean, look, Boston is the favorite going in. They should be. They've earned it, right? I get it. They're not. I'm saying that we have seen Miami.
Yes, we have.
Do this with a team that you go, well, wait, they're not the most talented team, but they still kick people's asses in the playoffs and get to the finals. So they can do it now. I think a year of Terry Rozier, that Terry's, to me, quintessential Miami Heat player.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
So, yeah, no, I mean, but will they? I don't know. But you give Boston the respect to say that's the number one dog on the block now.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I was really curious that the Heat didn't go all in on Damian Lillard, all in on Bradley Beal, which I guess to some degree with the Brad stuff, you saw what happened.
I think, they were in on Beal. Beal said, I want to go to Phoenix. Okay. He had the stupid no trade clause that the Wizards stupidly gave him. But yeah, no, they wanted Beal, but he just said, nah. So.
Did you say the Wizards and stupid in the same sentence, David Aldridge?
Old Wizards. New Wizards aren't stupid. Now, well, that doesn't mean they're going to be successful, but they're not stupid. So,
old Wizards. Oh, look, they were about to move to Virginia, and they were going to call themselves the Virginia Grand Wizards. Is that what we were going to do out here? Is that what we were going to do, DA?
There's a whole. We could have a whole podcast on that. This is one of the most arrogant and stupid decisions that rich men make because they think they're smarter than everybody else, in the history of decisions. But thankfully they will be in DC for the foreseeable future.
I'll tell you guys, one place that is severely underrated as a road stop is the District, is Chocolate City. Like, it may not be as much Chocolate City, chocolate in Chocolate City as it used to be from everything I understood. But baby, let me tell you, there are a few places I'd much rather be when it comes down to, hey, I got an extra night to just go hang and walk around and kick it. Oh, I like DC. I like it.
Everybody likes DC. That's why it's ridiculous that this team has been so bad for so long here. Because guys want to play here. Guys like coming here. Mm-hmm. They got money here. You know what I mean? Like, they got disposable income here. They got places to go. I always said the three franchises that if they ever figured it out would be destinations for a lot of players were Atlanta, Golden State, and Washington. Well, Golden State figured it out. They figured it out. They put a good team in place, but Atlanta sort of figured it out. Washington ain't figured it out yet.
I don't think they're going to figure it out. Look, I'm going to say I don't think they're going to figure it out. Let's just say history has shown, and they've made changes there, so you want to give the new guys the benefit of the doubt. Will Dawkins, I really like him over there, just sort of being boots on the ground, MDC type of thing. I do like that. So that's our top 5. Let us know what you think about that. But when we come back, we're going to take our last break. We're going to talk about James Dolan and him being James Dolan. Mm-hmm. Back on the Good Word, Vincent Goodwill here with David Aldridge. DA, we don't got to go long on James Dolan because he's James Dolan. Basically, the Knicks chairman hates the league office. It sounds like he doesn't even come to these board of governors meetings because he doesn't want to be in the same room with a lot of these people. His big thing is he does not like the revenue sharing system. He does not like sharing his Madison Square Garden market share with any of these other impoverished teams, including the Lakers. Like he thinks every team is operating in poverty compared to him. Now, I know in David J. Stern's NBA how David J. Stern would take to Mr. Dolan. How do you think Adam Silver, do you think he just like swats at him like a nuisance? Like, I'm not even taking his phone calls. I'm not going to pay attention to his last second memos. Like, how do you deal with a guy that's clearly just a nuisance to this entire process?
Adam's more about collaboration and hearing everybody's point of view. That wasn't how David rolled. This is not how he rolled. But to quote the late great Livia Soprano, "Oh, poor you, poor Jimmy Dolan." Stop it. I'll say this. One of the great quotes I ever got was from Art Modell, who owned the Cleveland Browns forever. And I said, the NFL seems to they always get more money. Why do you guys keep getting more money? And he said, the reason we get more money is because we're 30 fat cat Republicans who vote socialist. And what he meant by that was, we all do what's best for the league. So back in the day, the Browns, everybody had their own TV deal. The Cleveland Browns had their own television deal to put their games on television in Cleveland, because the thought was, well, nobody outside of Cleveland wants to watch the Browns, so let's make a deal for the Browns, for Cleveland. And they made a lot of money off of their TV deal. And then Pete Rozelle came in and said, you know what? It would be better for the league if we put all our games on national television, and got rid of all the local TV deals. And we want people in Green Bay to do well just as much as we want people in New York to do well. And all the NFL owners said, all right, we'll try it that way, and we see what happened, right? So that's the same thing the NBA is doing now. The NBA is like, no, this is stupid. We want more games on national TV because we want people to watch the Milwaukee Bucks. We want more people to watch the Milwaukee Bucks than are watching them now, because people will always watch the Knicks and they will always watch the Lakers, and they'll always watch the Celtics. And Jimmy Dolan, because he's Jimmy Dolan, is like, but that's less money for me. And they're like, yeah, it's less money for you. That's right. That's more. And there's more money for the league. And that's better for the league. And all the teams doing well is better for the league, as evidenced by this ginormous TV deal we just did. So
it's a weird thing when, and I think, and maybe this is a topic for another day, but the owners that David Stern lorded over and was able to influence and intimidate,
yes,
is completely different than these set of owners that Adam Silver has to massage and negotiate with. Like, he has to earn their trust in a completely different way than David. And I don't know the exact total number of teams that have changed hands in the past 15 years, but it's been a huge number.
Yeah.
Substantial. Where I would just think of some of the old guard. The old guard doesn't really exist anymore. There's Jerry Reinsdorf. There's the Buss family. There's the Holtz in San Antonio, and maybe a couple of others.
Well, Gail Benson in New Orleans. I mean, there's very few teams that are owned by individuals or individual businesses, for that matter. I mean, these are all multinational corporations. Well, not all. There's several multinational corporations that now own teams. So it's different, just different.
It's a lot different. And James Dolan, quoted by somebody at the BOG, was like, James Dolan is no idiot. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows exactly how he's agitating all of this. That's all he's trying. He's just an agitator. That's all. And there's a spot for agitation. Like theoretically, DA, as journalists, we are taught to agitate. I think that some of that has gotten lost.
We ask questions of the powerful. That's what we should be doing.
Yeah. But when the powerful starts to agitate, it just feels a little different. Because they're like, hey, y'all, don't you got enough money? Like what is it about you? But I think Adam Silver has a completely different job. The larger point is, Adam Silver has a totally different job than David Stern did in wrangling a lot of these fat cats when the pie keeps getting bigger and everybody keeps looking for a bigger share than the guy next to him.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I agree. It's a different world, different job. And, Jimmy Dolan doesn't like Toronto because of the, all the litigation. That's right. So he doesn't like Tannenbaum.
Watergate. And, will we come with a new name for that? Can that be like Toronto Gate or something like that? Can we come up with something?
I don't know.
The shenanigans of that suing the Toronto Raptors over intellectual property and everything else from former employee and all. It's just stupid. But either way, that, ladies and gentlemen, is David Aldridge. Don't forget, he is at The Athletic, where he has the unfortunate task of dealing with the Washington Commandos before he has to come and deal with the Bad News Bears, the Washington Wizards. He is a legend. Thank you, DA, for joining me this afternoon. Really appreciate you, brother.
Always, Vinny. Anytime, bro.
Thanks to David Aldridge. Thanks to producer John, and the entire team, who helps with this entire show. Jake and Dan will be back with another episode of No Cap Room next week. I'll be back in 2 weeks because ain't that much to talk about every week until we actually get to training camp, which is actually coming up pretty closely. Until then, everybody be safe.